Hey guys, it's Trey. We're here to talk about the Forte 3s and how they come about and their history a little bit. Forte started with Gary Gillum. He started with the company, late 70s, early 80s, and was the hand-picked engineer to replace Paul when he retired. Gary is a unique and really cool dude. I knew his son more than I did Gary. Dated some of the same girls. Gary had a reputation of being an excellent craftsman and still does. One of the things that he was tasked to do, from my understanding in the company, was to bring about another set of speakers using a little different wood, something less expensive and easier to mill than the current plywood. So they started using the veneer-covered MDF. Also, they wanted to try to control the drivers better than having to source those. So they actually started building drivers in Hope, Arkansas. From the compression drivers down to the woofer. They were trying to build it all right there. So the Fortes put a product in the line that gives the capabilities of the Cornwall virtually with less size. They've changed the format on this speaker a little bit versus the original by raising the woofer, changing the fit and finish size of the cabinet a little bit. Gets everything a little further off the floor, which helps with the bounce off the floors. They've added the patented mumps horn on the mid-range to help off-axis coverage. And then, of course, the new tweeter that they're using. Very similar to the original, very similar to the Pro cabinets, which is where this thing come from originally, right? The drivers that were used in it were built and formed after the drivers that were used in the Pro world. In this case, titanium, but in that time, the phenolic diaphragm assemblies that were used in the Pro world. And the horns were very similar. If you look back at the old Pro products from the early 80s, you'll see the same horns and drivers in all those products. So you see a lot of crossover with those parts, and what that does is it refines the sound of your Pro system to be a little more capable as a home speaker, and beefs up the capability of your home speaker to be a little more horsepower driven, similar to what you get from the Pro. Best of both worlds. Good engineering in my mind. The driver that they use today is very similar to what was used originally. The capabilities of that driver are pretty close. Roy went back and rematched the weight of the passive radiator. So the weight of this new passive is a little different than the old passive radiator. It was interesting back in that time, because I was in Hope, Arkansas at the time, and I was graduating high school just a couple of years before these came out. So going out to the plant, I knew a lot of people that worked there, a lot of family and friends. And we'd go out to the plant, we'd borrow speakers for weekends, we'd go do PA gigs for the 4-H or the FFA or somebody, and borrow products from Klipsch for the PA speaker. And it was most of the time not paid, and it was most of the time just so you get to play with some cool speakers and stuff that didn't cost you any money. It was a good learning experience for someone that was stuck in a small town and didn't have access to a lot of big PA, to get to be out in the plant and see some of the things that you got to see. And that's early on then, was when I saw how they were folding these cabinets and insetting that motorboard and wrapping that cabinet up like they do. You have basically, a horseshoe sitting in there, and then that motorboard sets in that horseshoe. So you've got a groove at the top of that, and that board sets up in it. So you're getting glue joint all the way around the three sides of that board. Everything was tried to be built in-house. They were trying to build the horns and the mid-range and woofers all in-house in Hope, to the point that they actually moved part of that world to Hot Springs. Kerry Geist was with the company for 30-something years. He was responsible as a senior engineer, moving all the driver company up to Hot Springs. And they were building all the drivers for these products in Hot Springs at the time. The company was purchased by Fred Klipsch in '89. And after that, they decided to buy those drivers in Mexico so they shut down all the driver portion of the company. Forte took a long hiatus between the Forte II and the Forte III. Glad that they brought this thing back. Paul had a lot of input on this product, crossover networks and balancing the speaker, getting as much out of it with the crossover network as he could. So the difference between these products compared to the earlier versions, first gen had a 12-inch passive radiator, second gen went to a 15-inch passive radiator, third gen has a 15-inch passive radiator. On the tweeter, the horn changed, but not much. Compression drivers changed a little bit. In the past, they used the compression driver assembled in Hope, and it had 4 magnet structures available for it, but it was the same diaphragm. Being able to use those parts across the board cut cost on building the product. And it also makes lower end products really good sounding products because you're using a larger driver. The KG2, for example, used the same physical dome as the Forte. Difference was this was a 14.7 ounce magnet structure, and that was a 7-ounce magnet structure. The woofer has stayed pretty close to the same as this all along. It was a K28. It's been sourced from 3 different places after Klipsch quit making it themselves. The mid-range horn on this over the last 2 generations is a complete step up in my mind. The mumps, as they're affectionately called, or the fill-in the corner, helps the speaker's off-axis response dramatically. As the high frequency comes out of that driver, it tries to pull away from that horn in the corners of the horn. With the mumps on there, it helps hold that air column tighter to the horn. You salvage a good portion of that loss that you used to get off axis. What that does is open up that sound stage and make the depth of that sound stage better. So if you're listening to a piece, you close your eyes, you hear the guy singing up front, but behind him, you can hear the piano playing. You can tell that it's behind him because of those things in the horn. One of the differences between the version 2 and this unit are the input cups and the binding post. You can see, just like we looked at on the Heresy, it has the metal binding post that are set a specific distance apart using the flat jumpers to connect the high frequency to the low frequency of the cabinet. The capabilities and the hand craftsmanship that comes out of Hope, Arkansas is pretty amazing. Those people have it down to a pretty good science. I know Jerry Calhoun's been there for a number of years. He's the senior guy down there, and if I'm not mistaken, they're 98, 99% efficient on the line. Meaning if this speaker starts as a flat piece of wood, 98 to 99% of the time it comes off the end of the line as a finished speaker and goes out the door. So very little scrap, if you will, in any of these products built in Hope, because the people take their time and try to make sure that it's as finite finish and finite detail as they can make it. With the new combination of parts that they use in these products, they've moved to a 10-year warranty over the last version's 5-year warranties. They've always had a lot of faith in the products, but it really shows when you look at a 10-year warranty on one. It's not heard of very often in the audio industry is having a 10-year warranty. On the original speaker, the input cup was inset and had the 5-way binding post. The second gens had a different input cup with the same basic 5-way binding post. On this unit, we have the flat metal plate instead of the inset cup. It's a little more rugged binding post, but it's a lot easier to get to and make the connections. On the earlier generations of the Forte, the original diaphragm on the tweeter was phenolic, and we moved to poly on the second gen and then titanium on this. The same progression happened on the mid-range. And then the woofer has always been a hemp-based woofer. They've changed manufacturers and changed the weight of the cone a little bit over the years, maybe the size of the dust cap. But for all general purposes, it's pretty similar to what it's been over the years, with the difference being some of the acoustic values of the product being a little different today versus what it was in the past, enabling a little different voicing of the speaker. So looking at the history of these products, I think they've came a long way to reaching a pinnacle for one of the products that's been in the company for 35, 40 years now. Last time we took a look at the Heresy, this time the Forte. In the next round, we're going to set them side by side and do a A/B listening. So in the meantime, like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any input or would like to have something specific covered on the channel, let us know. We'll do what we can for you.